Speed, ferocity, efficiency. When loyal defenders of Super Earth are called into action, these are the very traits our enemies have learned to fear. But to be a fast, ferocious, and efficient deliverer of liberty requires a weapon itself emblematic of those qualities. Well, it's a liberty-loving good thing we have just that. A democratic tool designed to spray death upon all filth which crawls out to meet it. Steel yourself, Helldiver, and take up arms. It's time to deliver some sweet managed democracy. And the SG-225 Spray and Pray is up for the challenge. There was once a time where just the mere mention of this weapon would cause even the most forgiving of Helldiver to recoil in disgust. Fortunately, the talented weaponsmiths and researchers at Super Earth R&D recalled the original model to address and improve on a few glaring deficiencies. And thank Liberty, as the current version of the Breaker Spray and Pray is finally the weapon it always should have been. So what is it that the SMP does so well and why? Well, let's take a brief dive into the weeds, shall we? The description for the weapon reads as such: a modified breaker shotgun firing birdshot, small pellets which saturate an area to clear up smaller targets. And there we have it, folks. We've learned pretty much all there is to know about this beauty. I hope you learned something valuable, and I'll see you next time. Still here? Well, thank Liberty then. Because while in theory this description is an accurate summation of the weapon as a whole, it fails to exacerbate the strengths, something all loyal super citizens take pride in. So then you might be wondering, this is just another breaker, right? I mean, who really cares? First of all, democracy cares, and you should be deeply ashamed of asking such a traitorous question. Now, to address what makes the SMP unique, let's begin by examining the statistical differences alongside its two cousins. At a baseline, the SMP sits at the bottom of the damage ladder, boasting a humble stat of 192. This puts its democracy-dealing efficiency slightly behind the incendiary in both DPS and DPR, whereas the standard breaker, it's a split between the two. So evaluating weapons is just about numbers, right? And if that's the case, this just means the incendiary takes the cake. Wrong. As with everything in life, you should know by now that nothing is as simple as it seems. Each of these weapons has a desired use case, with specific strengths and weaknesses. Assuming otherwise is assuming that our weapons researchers somehow made a mistake. And when you assume, you make an ass out of you and only you. So as I was saying, the differences between the three breakers aren't quite as subtle as you might think. For one, the incendiary fires in bursts, requiring consistent and timely trigger pulls. Did I mention its affinity to set everything in its path ablaze, enemy and Helldiver alike? On the other hand, the standard breaker is a regular bull in a china shop, delivering generous amounts of pain and misery to just about everything, including the user, as the punishing recoil often precedes a brand new rotator cuff. But what if you want the full auto magic without the team-killing guilt and shoulder surgery? Well, son, that's where the SMP slides right in. The Spray and Pray, like the other breakers, continues the time-honored tradition of being a dummy gun. Perfect for divers who'd rather not take the time to aim, but simply hold the trigger. While poor trigger discipline would be a disaster with most other weapons, doing so with the SMP actually protects the user from their own stupidity. Now, am I saying divers are stupid for using this weapon? Of course not. After all, it is literally designed to spray and pray. The issue here is that too many a diver follow this philosophy, no matter the tool they're holding. And at least with the spray and pray, you're more likely to hit something other than just the backside of your squad members. That being said, If you do graze the keister of a fellow diver, the SMP is far more forgiving than its cousins. This is thanks to its smaller caliber rounds being intended for smaller targets. And so, we come to it. What exactly is the SMP designed for? Trash. It's designed to take out the trash. Scavengers, baby spewers, hunters, the crap that's nibbling at your ankles every time you sneeze and trigger a breach. With most of this trash, the SMP is efficient with a one-shot kill to center mass. However, it is also forgiving. If multiple shots are needed, have at it. The rapid-fire full-auto nature here is the real charm, making quick and effective work of the little guys. However, when needed, the SMP answers the call for some larger foes as well. Warriors, for instance, generally drop with 3 to 5 shots to the head. The generous spread of the SMP means there's some inconsistency here as to where all of your shots land, but generally it is quite effective at shredding these foes. Brood commanders, while certainly manageable, are far easier to deal with by clipping their legs out from under them with just a few shots. At that point, you may do with them as you please, though I need not remind you of the regulations on cross-species relations. Beyond the brood commanders, spewers tend to soak up quite a bit of shots, sometimes half a mag or more. And chargers, while impervious everywhere but their backside, can actually be dealt with if you focus fire effectively. Usually a full mag or so is enough to burst their behinds, followed by a bleed out. This surprised me, as I didn't expect the SMP's birdshot to be very effective here, but it turns out the sheer fire rate and mag capacity make up for the lessened damage. Still, it's worth mentioning this is only advisable in a pinch, when no other options exist. As usual, it's always recommended to utilize your stratagems on the bigger foes. So while it may not be ideal for all enemies, the SMP is perfectly designed and suited for dealing with a large chunk of the bug horde, and it's very effective at doing so while keeping you on the move. The full auto nature, as mentioned before, allows a sort of hit-and-run approach, and having 26 shells to spray at your enemies within a moment's notice means this tool of mayhem is a dream for any diver looking to stay on the move. Unfortunately, when it comes to bots, the spray and pray begins to lose some of its luster. While it's generally effective at dispatching light infantry with relative ease, devastators will either take a full mag or more, or you'll have to get lucky with a headshot. Neither strategy being one worth risking the mission over. So while you can certainly make the SMP work here, it's not in its comfort zone per se. And when employed against the bot menace, I'd recommend running it as a secondary instead, purely for light infantry. Which actually brings me to my final point. One way in which I've found the SMP to be particularly useful is when it's used as a secondary firearm. What do I mean by this? Well, let's say you're facing the Terminids and want to use something like the autocannon or arc thrower as your primary liberty dealer. Both tools possess significant firepower and are able to deal with medium armored enemies with ease. However, the autocannon is slow and lumbering to aim, and its reload is not one you want to be stuck with mid-breach. The arc thrower, on the other hand, while my favorite support weapon to main, is ineffective at point-blank range, and its charge-up fire rate can be dicey when enemies get too close. Both of these scenarios would benefit with the SMP as a backup, pulling it out in a pinch to quickly shake off any undesirables moving in too close. This method means you not only have a reliable secondary, you have considerably more firepower to rely on in the heat of the moment than just a meager sidearm. But of course, this will all come down to preference with each diver. If you want to be pure trash control, a rover would also aid in the SMP's duties as well. Ultimately, there are many ways to utilize its qualities. At the end of the day, the charm of the SMP is that it knows precisely what its purpose is and how to operate within it. There is no confusing this weapon for any other method or strategy. Use it to sweep the trash into a democratic dustbin and move on with the mission. So at the end of the day, the real question still lingers. With 3 breakers to choose from, what scenario or playstyle would lead you to choose the SMP? Well, if you plan on focusing much of your build around your stratagems and support weapon, the SMP serves beautifully as a reliable backup. And when paired with a rover, it becomes the ultimate anti-chaff tool, with more magazine and total ammo capacity than either of its cousins. It is also the only one of the bunch with nearly 30 shells of ammunition capable of being fired in full auto. thus earning its hyperbolic title with earnest aplomb. So while it's certainly not the brute of the family, and it won't be starting a Helldiver barbecue anytime soon, the Spray and Pray has earned a solid place of honor within its family of boomstick nobility. It is reliably fun to use, easy to control, and well suited in its capabilities of cleaning out the trash. Ultimately, this is an easy one to grade. The Spray and Pray earns a liberty-loving stamp of approval. It provides a slightly different flavor of crowd control to its cousins, while filling a nice niche within the combat loop. But what do you think? Be sure to let me know your thoughts on this instrument of freedom down in the comments. And if there's any weapons you'd like to see covered in a review, drop them down below. I read every one of your comments, and I just have to say, once again, thank you for all of the support. With that, my fellow freedom fighters, I will sign off and leave you with a final charge. Take out the trash, Helldivers, for managed democracy, for Super Earth.